My name is Carlos Díaz, for those of you that don't know me. And I'm the organizer of this stuff. And I wasn't pretending to do any presentation here, but we were not many people so brave to do this kind of stuff, so I decided to do this. And because I didn't have many things, I'm not a researcher, I'm a technical guy like Hugo. What I'm going to do here is something that I already did in a conference in Poland in March, I think. And it's this very interesting paper, I think. It's the findings of 14 people from different parts of the world. It all started with an idea of Miss Bokova, who wanted to do some small paper, but it has been growing. There are still a few authors from Asia. I have to tell you that they will be in this paper as well. Okay. Because I don't have the expertise of these 14 people. I'll try to do my best, but probably I will make many mistakes, and I apologize for them beforehand. Okay, so this is the part that I know best. This is the legislation in Europe. And in Europe, it's everything based on the Industrial Emissions Directive. From 2010. This directive applies to 33 countries, member countries, that are under the umbrella of the European Environmental Agency. And one of the points of this Industrial Emissions Directive is that it controls the emissions of the air, water, wastes, soil, and inside the air there is in some other pollutant plants. There is also some guidelines for this, so I'm gonna speak a little bit about this. The Industrial Emission Directive rules what the installations should do, and everything is on the frame of the integrated environmental authorization, which has all the requirements that the plant should have in order to have a permit and in order to operate. So here we have the industrial emission directives is based on the best available technique. It's based on some documents, which are the best available techniques reference documents, and they follow a very detailed procedure. It's here, the scheme. Okay. Will I do it? Yeah. So here we have the technical working groups. There is a kickoff meeting, and then you have here the industry, the NGOs, and representative of the member states, a representative of the European Commission, and a special body of the European Commission that is dealing with this. And then there is a kickoff meeting, and then after this kickoff meeting, well, it's some questionnaires are filled, and then there is the release of the first draft. The first draft is released, then there is another meeting, and then there is the release of the second draft. And here you see the comments. The comments at this stage comes from these groups only, because it's not open already to more people, just to the members of this group. Then there is the final technical working group meeting, which releases the final draft, and then we have the best reference technique document, And in this document, what is there is an opinion of some organism, and this, which is very important, which is the best available technique conclusions. They are published on the European journal, and they this is a new thing now, new 3 or 4 years, and in those guidelines, it's not like a norm that it's in a document published somewhere. This is published in the European Official Journal, which gives the better states of legislation. So the new thing of the best available technique conclusions is very important, and it will rule the way the industrial activities will be working in the future years. So I was counting, and there are 30 BREF documents published for different activities. And here we see the previous BREF were references. Am I doing? Were references. What happened with this? These things changed recently as well. And now these emission limit values, which were set as references, they were like a range of emission limits below, if you applied the best available techniques, or if you didn't apply all of them, you had a range where you could rule, but it was not compulsory. And now we have the best available technique associated emission levels, which are compulsory. That means that that means a very important thing, that if there is a limit set in the European Union, in the BREF, any plant has to follow this limit. Before, it was not compulsory. It was a reference value. Now it's compulsory. So this is the key difference. And I think this is an important approach, and it will change the way industrial plants are working nowadays in Europe. So these are the countries that we covered. It's not all, they are not all the European countries, but it's very difficult to cover all the European countries, and I think we got some of the most representative countries in Europe. So we analyzed the legislation in France, Germany, Austria, Hungary, United Kingdom, Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, and Belgium. It's not there, but we did Belgium as well. So, France. There are some specific regulations for animal byproduct processing plants. And here we see the emission limit for these animal byproduct processing plants. We have new plants and existing plants. It is for animal byproduct processing plants. It's not for any plant, just for this specific sector. So for new plants, they have, it's in the legislation, it's legislated. They have an emission limit of 5 Odour units per cubic meter. And this value, this Odour emission, this Odour impact criteria cannot be this Odour concentration cannot be higher than 5 Odour units per cubic meters, 3 kilometers from the fence of the plant installation. And this is done with a percentile 99.5, I think. It's 44 hours. Yes, 99.5. And for existing plants, this is not based on receptor, as you see. It's based on the distance from the fence. It's a different approach than the normal approach. It's 3 kilometers, again, 5 Odour units per cubic meter, but what it changes here is the percentile is 98. It cannot go over 5 Odour units at 3 kilometers from the industrial plant more than 175 hours per year. Now, that's fine, but if you do not have an Odour dispersion model, and you don't have the money to pay for it, there is a general rule that states that if your sources, if you have less than 1,000 other units per cubic meters, no dispersion is to be made. That's very challenging, because for animal byproduct processing plants, I wonder if there is any that have 1,000 other units per cubic meter. But I put it on the legislation. I think it's reasonable. You don't need to do a dispersion model if you have this emission rate, this emission concentration, sorry. And now, there is an inspection procedure that sets for if the odor concentration, the sum of all the odor concentration is higher than 100,000 odor units per cubic meters, the frequency of the odor control has to be 4 times every year. 4 times every year. But if you have, this is interesting, if you have an e-nose, an O sensor, an electronic monitoring system, you can do it every year. You don't need to do it four times a year. So sometimes you can save some money maybe and consider to use an electronic sensor here. Now, if the range is this, between 100,000 other units and 5,000 other units, you have to check your emissions twice a year. But if you have a e-nose or O sensor, or you have monitoring your emissions, you can do it once every 2 years. This is twice a year. This is once every 2 years. Sounds similar, but it's not the same. And now, if you have below 5,000 other units per cubic meters, you just have to check every year your odor emissions. But if you have an e-nose or O sensor, you can do it triennial. So I think it's the only legislation that I know that regulates specifically electronic monitoring systems as a tool to help you to regulate the frequency of your odor inspections in your plant. Now, for composting plants, there is a general rule for all plants. Doesn't matter if they are existing or new, of 5 other units per cubic meters, 3 kilometers from the fence, and the percentile 98, less than 175 hours per year. At the beginning in my presentation I had percentiles, but I wanted to put it in hours because I think this is what it changed sometimes in many of the legislation in some countries, and that's why I started to put it in hours. If you have more than 5 other units per cubic meters, then you have to do an odor management plan, and this we will see in many legislations in other countries in the world. And now for food and beverage, here you have, there are some fixed odor emission rates. This is odor unit per hour, not per cubic meter, per hour. So depending on the height of your chimney, of your stack, if you have to have less than this odor emission rates, according to the legislation in France. So it's also a special legislation because it's not based on odor dispersion modeling. It's just take your sample, measure, and if it goes up or below this level, it pass or it doesn't pass. Germany. Well, Germany has is based on the TE Luft, which is a very old legislation, but it has been recently, a few years now, updated. Many years. And here the interesting thing is that there is a peak to mean factor of 4. So that means that for one odor unit, the concentration you have to divide by 4 is 0.25 odor units per cubic meters. And you have to have this concentration for residential and mixed areas, less than 10% of the hours of the year, 876 hours per year, or 50% of for commercial and industrial areas. This is less than 1,314 hours a year. But this is this concentration. Okay. There they have different approaches. They have the grid method, the plume method, and they also do factometry. There are very interesting papers. One by Ralph Both that I recommend to read about the legislation in Germany. It's from 2004, but it's very interesting. Austria. There are no limits, no legal limits in Austria. But now there is a guideline made by this Academy of Science of Austria. And this guideline is because it's not published in an official journal, it's not a legislation, it's just a guideline. But it is taken as a reference in many cases in Austria. So here you have the exceedance probability is 8% or 3%, less than 700 hours a year or less than 263 hours a year. Then there is a way to quantify intensity. They say weak and strong. For this is not very straightforward, but anyway, this is the approach they took. That if the concentration is one other unit, intensity should be weak. We know that this is very relative, and between 5 and 8 other units, the intensity should be is strong according to them, and that's why they from intensities they get other concentrations, and from other concentrations they get they do the dispersion modeling. Okay, this is the way they do it. In Hungary, there is no national odor impact criteria in use, and it's this typical exceedance probability of 2% percentile 98. We have seen it before, and between 3 and 5. United Kingdom. Robert is here. When I did this presentation, Robert was not there. Okay, so there are 3 guidelines, in fact. I have put here 2, but there are 3. Well, there are more, but they're related to others that I know 3. This is the H4 Odor Management Guideline. It's very famous. It was first edited a few years ago, and this is the 2nd edition. And the 2nd edition is very, very curious because they have a very nice annex with a table with other impact criteria for different activities, and now this annex has been removed. This annex has been taken as a example for many other legislations, but now it's not there anymore, so I don't know. And then they have this very interesting other guidance for local authorities from March 2010. So emissions from the activities, according to the UK Environmental Agency, shall be free from odor at levels likely to cause pollution outside the site, as perceived by an authorized officer of the Environment Agency, unless the operator has used appropriate measures, including but not limited to those specified in any approved odor management plan. We see here again the odor management plan, to prevent or where that is not achievable, to minimize the odor. The operator, the industrial plant, has to submit to the Environment Agency for approval the odor management plan, which identifies and minimizes the risk of pollution from odor. And they have to approve this odor management plan. Here, they published a guideline on dispersion modeling, but unfortunately this guideline is based on Gaussian dispersion models, ADMS and AirMod. I've tried to find references to Lagrangian models, but I couldn't find any, just 2 sentences about Austal 2000G from Germany. And I'm a bit concerned about this because as we know, for count conditions, Gaussian dispersion models might not work very well, and the count conditions are key when we deal with the other dispersion modeling. So I think it should be reviewed, to be honest. Anyway, that's my opinion. And in Spain, there was a regulation, and here you see the table. This table was taken from the UK H4 guideline, more or less. It's similar, and you see levels of 3, 5, 7, depending on the different activities, but there is no legislation about odors in Spain. That was made in the region of Catalonia, but then the pork industry was very strong at that time, and they decided to cancel the legislation, so it wasn't approved. There is no legislation, but it is taken as a reference for most of the technicians and labs here. In the Netherlands, there is again the overall odor regulation based on the Industrial Emissions Directive. The law of 5th of October 2006 regulates odor nuisance caused by animal accommodation used in livestock farming, and there are some other guidelines, very interesting. Many of them focused on farms. And here we have the objective that Hugo, I think, mentioned in the Netherlands of having, for the year 2000, not more than the 12% of the population exposed to odor annoyance, and in 2010, Dutch people no longer subject to serious annoyance of odor. And you have seen this map before. I show it again. Italy. Laura is here. In the 2003, there was a guide on composting repealed that states 300 odor units per cubic meters. Then in 2012, there was another guideline from Lombardy, from the region of Lombardy, that that is now ruling that area of Italy, and is taken as reference for other regions in Italy. And this in this norm, there are 2 things that Laura did this part, and I think she pointed out to the most important key things of this legislation, and one of them is that Gaussian models are excluded, technically excluded. So I think that's a very important thing, and they also need to consider the impact of 1, 3, and 5 other units per cubic meters. So that means that they have to do the map with the 3 other impact criteria, which is also, I think, a very nice approach. Now there are other legislation from Puglia and Veneto, and the first from Puglia is, I think, it's not official anymore, and from Veneto I have no information. Belgium, 2 regions, the Flemish and the Walloon regions. They are normally based on field inspections, Bloom method. This is the norm that is going to be published, I hope, this year. In Wallonia, they use the dispersion model ADMS, Gaussian. And in Flanders, they use the dispersion model IFDM, Gaussian as well, I think. For field inspections, results are expressed in sniffing units, not in other units. Sniffing units, not in other units. It's a different way of measuring odors. So in Wallonia, there is, for example, for composting, limit of 3 other units per centime 98 to the closest receptor. It's not 3 kilometers like in France, it's to the closest receptor. There's a difference here. And for farms, you have this these limits, 3, 10, and 6, depending on the sector. And this for existing plants, and this is for new plants. And here, for what I was saying before to Laura, municipal solid waste landfills usually make the controls with field inspections, not with dynamic olfactometry and dispersion modeling. And the other region of Flanders of Belgium is Flanders. And here you have this scale for a 98 percentile. And you see here sniffing units. This is not odor units, this is sniffing units. Sniffing units per cubic meters for slaughterhouses and wet water treatment plant. There is a target value. When you have no effect means that the other concentration has no effect on you. And you have 0.5 sniffing units and 0.5 sniffing unit per cubic meter. It's 98 percentile. And the limit value would be 1.5 sniffing unit again, and 2.0 sniffing units. It's different. When there is a risk of nuisance, best available techniques should be used. Australia and New Zealand. In Australia, the Odours are controlled by the protection by the Environmental Operations Act from 1997, and in New Zealand by the Resources Management Act of New Zealand from 2004. And there are strict odor assessment criteria in both countries. So there is a very nice table in the paper. We hope to publish it next year if we stop putting more authors on the paper. And in that paper you will see a table with percentiles. So we did this here is doing a small to summarize the percentages that you can find there. It's, you can find 100, 99.9 and 99.5. The odor assessment criteria is in other units per cubic meter between 0.5 for 1 hour averages to 7 for 1 second averages. And in New Zealand, the odor assessment criteria is between 1 and 10 other units per cubic meter, but here they take 1 hour averages. No pictuming here. And the interesting thing of the legislation in Australia and New Zealand is this, I think. Depending on the number of people, this is not depending on the, like in Belgium or in other countries, depending on the, if you have sensitive areas like schools or residential areas, or non very sensitive areas like industry plants and so. No, it's nothing like this. It's different. It's based on the number of people that you have. You have different other limits, other impact criteria, depending on the density of your area. And I think this is a very nice approach. This is happening in Australia, not in New Zealand. If you see in New Zealand, it doesn't matter if you have 1 person or 2,000 persons, you have between 1 and 10. Here, depending on the amount of people that you have in an area, you have different other impact criteria. And I think it's a very nice approach that I would like to see is more often because I like it. America. I'm gonna in the States, in the United States, probably many of you know that dynamic olfactometry is not really that well implemented, and many regulations are based on dilution to threshold, which it's measured with a field olfactometer. There are not many states that have legislation. Here you have a map with the states. If you see, most of the United States is white. That means that not many states have other regulations. And there are 3 examples that I wanted to show you. This is the sample of the state of Colorado. They have different dilution to thresholds. Not all the units per cubic meters, no dispersion modeling here. And duration and frequency is important. Then the example of the city of Des Moines. There is a municipal odor ordinance, and the city declares an odor alert when 10 complaints in a 24-hour period is received. And if there are 3 notices of violations in a 90-day period, guess what? Odor management plan. And now, for the agriculture, this part was developed by Jasio Kosho. He has been working with odors in the agriculture for many, many years. So here you see, I wanted to put these slides because here you see odors, but not only odors is the key here, is ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, VOCs, PM2.5. So it's not, it's one of the things. It's not the only thing, it's one of the things. The approach is based on the common sense. And these are the major findings of a paper from Redwine and Lacey. 10 US states regulate odor directly. 34 US states have some rule or regulation designed to curtail odor emissions without explicit limitation, based on distance setback, manual management plan, permitting, land application regulations, and manual applications training. Canada. There is a Canadian federal regulation that does not contain any regulations relating to the emission of odors. So only some provinces and territories have outlined some regulations regarding odors. There are some nuisance acts or regulations, environmental acts, or regulations, environmental acts. Standards or guidelines for specific odorous chemicals, hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, the same than in the States, more or less. The Right to Farm Act, it's a kind of permit for farms. There are 3 approaches, quantitative, qualitative, and operational. The effects of odors, in some jurisdictions, the prediction of odor is sufficient to ground an offense to have occurred in Ontario, whereas in other jurisdictions it is necessary to demonstrate that there is an adverse effect from the odor for the offense to have occurred, most of the provinces. Most of the acts that provide a list of potential conditions which can be used to demonstrate that an adverse effect has occurred. These are the areas of Canada. And these are some of the regulations here. South America, we are reaching the end. Just 3 minutes overpassed. We have Chile, no other regulation yet, but they have a paper pulp regulation where they regulate total reduced sulfurs. But they have many norms, they have developed many norms along the years to deal with odors. And here you see the EN 13725 is the NCH 3190 from 2010. So they have been 6 years using the EN 13725. Just the differences that they analyzed the sample in 24 hours instead of 30, and some other small differences. They apply the VDI 3880 from 2009. This is the Chilean norm, 3386 from 2015, last year. This norm, if you don't know, is a German norm that has more stringent requirements for sampling in olfactometry. So that means that, for example, in Chile, they have to, from 2015, they have to analyze in 8 hours a sample. This is what the norm says. And then they have this VDI 3883, which is, I don't know which one is this. This one is not from 2015. This is the one of the complaints. This is very old. This is not from 2015. But this one, yes. This is based, this is a German regulation of questionnaires, this psychometry in order to check the state of odor emissions in an area. So hey, they have 3 norms, so it's nice. And as a regular basis, they apply the odor impact criteria similar to the Catalonian draft, which was get from the UK H4 horizontal guideline, which have been removed. In Colombia, there is an other regulation. It's the first one. It's the first one in South America, and I think these other management plans, they really like this. There is an extensive set of norms as well. I didn't have time to collect them, but they have 2, 3, or 4 norms on other measurement. They have dynamic olfactometry, is this one, NTC Norma Técnica Colombiana 5880 from 2010. And then they have other norms as well, based on the questionnaires, and I'm not sure if they have also from the VDI 3940 grid measurements and plume measurements. I think so. Limits 3, 5, 7, presently 98. That guideline in UK has made so much impression on the rest of the world. And now we have Asia. It's not written. We have already something like 40 pages, more or less, or more, of legislation. And Asia is going to come as well, because we met some Chinese guys at the conference in Italy, in Ischia, last month, and they liked the idea of joining us in this paper. So Asia is going to be covered. So I hope one day they will do this instead of me. Oh, and Africa, we don't have anything, okay? So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, I have one, and it's a difficult one, I think, because in the Netherlands we have the same criteria as everyone. We measure emissions, calculate dispersion, and say some concentration at some percentile should be met. But those percentiles, that's a strange one, because many factories don't have constant emissions. So what do they have to meet? Because the 98th percentile is always presented as the amount of numbers in a year. But if you control them this week, you measure the emission, or you let them do so, you measure a high emission, but if you measure them next week, so how to deal with that item? Because I like the idea to say, well, never mind which hour, every hour you have to meet the emission level, and not the emission level based on a year, something like that.
That's always the conflict between the three ways of characterizing odors. The first one is taking representative emissions. This is the first one of dealing with you go, you check, okay, this is representative, I take another sample. The second way is taking the worst possible conditions, which is, okay, I wait until everything is terrible, or I get the worst case scenario, and then I go and I measure. Then the third way of dealing with this is like they do in Chile and other places, is doing a profile. So doing a profile, depending on your, it's expensive, but you can do it, depending on your specific conditions, operative conditions, you have to take another sample. So sometimes if you have 10 specific other conditions, you have to take 10 samples, triplicates, 30. Yes, it is a very interesting reflection and a very interesting thought, but I haven't seen in any legislation what you say, and I would like to see it, yes, yes.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's not really a question, but just a remark. You know, I'm always surprised when in regulation we have a limit in with one odor unit, and typically for a percentile, because of course one odor unit, theoretically, in a theoretical point of view, you smell 50% of the time, and you don't smell 50% of the time, and typically you are unable to say that is an annoyed odor, because at this level, so just a remark, but okay, we can decide that, okay, annoyance is at 2 or 3 odor unit, and then try to have a lower value than 2 or 3, okay, but to fix one, it's always it's always difficult.
Well, I think the use of peak-to-mean approaches is necessary nowadays, and I think we have to start using sub-hourly data to do modeling. Okay, it gets a lot of computational resources, but it has to be done, because others, as you say, it's not ours, it's another thing. And yes, it's a half hour without us. Yeah. Okay, if there are no more questions.